So what is a Chevra Kadisha? The word Chevra Kadisha means holy society. We have the word Chevra, which means society. It's the same root word as chaverim, right? Friends, right? And Kadisha is the same root word as kadosh, so it's holy. It's the holy group of people. And in this context, the Chevra Kadisha is responsible for burying and preparing the deceased according to Jewish law, according to halakha. And then we have the term aron. Aron, like we call the structure that holds our Torah, we call it the Aron HaKodesh. The ark, we call it the ark, right? And there was the true Aron HaKodesh, which had which was inside the Holy of Holies. Mm-hmm. But Aron simply means like also Noah's Ark was also an Aron. It's like a wooden container, okay? So a box. So Aron refers in this context to the casket that is used for burial. And traditionally, it should be simple and unadorned. And then we have the term avel. Let's all say all these terms together. Okay, let's say first Chevra Kadisha. Can you say that? Chevra Kadisha. Okay, good. Chevra Kadisha. And then aron. Can you say aron? Aron. That's the casket. And then we have avel. Can you say avel? Avel, and that is the mourner, the person who's mourning the death of a loved one. They are an avel. And if they're Jewish, they're supposed to be observing the laws for mourning. And then this next word is chesed, shel, emet. Can you say that? Chesed, shel, emet. Chesed is loving kindness. Shel is means belongs to, or something like that. Like yes, it's possessive. It's how to say something that you own or that someone owns. Okay, so chesed, shel, emet. So this is emet means true. So chesed, shel, emet means loving kindness that is true, or in this case, it's a kindness done without expectation of return, specifically referring to burial of the dead. So it's considered a mitzvah. It's considered a chesed shel emet to take care of and prepare a dead body. Okay, and then we have the word halakha, which most of you should be familiar with. It refers to Jewish law. It comes from the word halach, or a walk, okay, the way we walk. And this is the word that we use to refer to the binding legal framework regarding Jewish law, but specifically here regarding governing burial practices. And then we have also kavod hamet, and kavod means, let's say that together, kavod hamet. Kavod means honor. Sometimes it means glory. Here we're going to say honor. And then hamet, met is death. Okay, hamet is the dead, the deceased. Okay, kavod hamet, honor of the deceased. How do we honor them? And this is a central guiding principle of all burial actions, that we should display kavod hamet. Okay, then we have kevurah, or the burial itself. Let's say that together. Kevurah, and this is the placing of the deceased into the ground. And then we have kevurah bezmana. Let's say that together. Kevurah bezmana, and this means timely burial. Kevurah is burial. Bezmana means timely, in the proper time. Bezmana, zaman is time. Timely burial. This is the requirement to bury without unnecessary delay. And then we have the term levaya. Let's say that together. Levaya. This is the funeral or burial procession. And then we have the term minhag. Everyone say minhag. This means custom. And this is a community practice that may supplement but not override halakha. And different communities can have different customs. They can be congregational wide, and they can be more like what you grew up with, something like that. Or it can also be according to your family tradition. typically in your home you would follow your father's the father's way, minhag. In a community, it would just be whatever that community's minhag is. I cannot zoom in anymore, but I'm sorry, but maybe I can just make the text bigger. See if I can do that. Oh yeah, I can. Is that better? Yeah. How much? Is that good? I don't know when to stop. Okay. Okay, that's better. Okay, good. Okay, so next is a posek. And this is a halachic decisor. This is a rabbi who rules on Jewish law questions. Ruben and I do it as best we can, and then when there are things that we don't know, if there's time, we will ask one of our rabbis. If there's no time, then we just go with what we think makes sense at the time. A rav can refer to a rabbi, not necessarily though. In some Jewish Orthodox communities, rav simply means Mr. Okay, so but it depends on your community and the context. And then Shabbat, Shabbat. Okay, the Sabbath affects certain parts of halakha when it comes to burying the deceased. And then we have shmirah. This is the act of guarding or watching over the body from death until burial. And then we have shomer or shomer. This is the person who performs shmirah, the guarding. Okay. We also call the special matzah that's been guarded since the grain was picked. We call that shmura matzah because that grain has been watched the whole time from picking until it got into that matzah box by an observant Jew. This is related to these words also. Tahara is purity. In this context, it refers to ritual purification of the body prior to burial. And then we have the word talit as a prayer shawl. Burial customs, they'll vary by community. Tachrichim, let's say that, tachrichim. These are the simple white burial garments symbolizing equality and purity in death. And then we have tzniut, let's say tzniut. And this refers to modesty, and it governs our conduct and our speech when we are handling a dead body. We should be tzniut in our behavior. Then we have the word tumah, which is ritual impurity, which is associated with death. And then yom tov. This is, that word, but we need this word because sometimes burial rules may differ from on yom tovs versus the weekdays, the regular days of the week. Okay, so we're going to go through the laws that govern the work of the Chevra Kadisha. Okay, and there are sources there that you could look up. And the first is kavod emet, or honor of the dead, if you remember, okay? And the law is that the deceased must be treated with dignity at all times. No unnecessary exposure, delay, or disrespect. So just because the person is dead, that doesn't mean that you can make fun of them or gossip about them or things like that. Okay. Number 2. So in the Mishnah Avot, it talks about how humans are accountable even after death. This is a conceptual foundation. In the Mishneh Torah by Rambam, it says that disgracing the dead violates kavod emet. And in the Shulchan Aruch, it says that there's a prohibition of degrading the dead. And another important Jewish law is that there should be a kevurah bezmana, a prompt burial. The burial should occur as soon as possible. Delays are forbidden unless for the honor of the deceased. And the Mishnah, it says in Sanhedrin 6:5 that he, or the deceased, shall not remain overnight. It should be the same day if possible. And Number 3, there's a prohibition of deriving benefit, hana'ah, from the deceased body. No benefit may be derived from the body or burial shrouds. It's, in a sense, holy. It is for Hashem. And then we have tahara, or the ritual cleansing. The body must be washed and purified respectfully. So I don't have any experience with this, but the Pizarros do. So I've asked them to speak about their experience. I don't think they're available today, but hopefully next week they can talk about that. So the body must be washed and purified respectfully. Blood and bodily fluids must be buried with the deceased. Sources for that include the Mishnah, tumah of the dead, and this gives the framework for purification. And then we have the tachrichim, or the burial garments. The law is that one should be buried in simple white shrouds. This is to symbolize that we are all equal in our death. There's no distinction between the rich or the poor. Another important principle is that there should be a separation in genders. If the deceased is a man, biologically from birth, men are supposed to prepare that deceased body, and if it is a woman, then women are supposed to prepare that deceased body. And if that is not followed, then it's considered a breach of modesty and dignity. Okay, it's part of being tzniut. And then we have the law of shmirah, which is that the deceased should not be left, unattended until they are buried. This is not explicit in the Mishnah, but it is a very strong custom, which is recorded in the Mishneh Torah and Shulchan Aruch. And part of the reason for this is so that the body will not become disrespected or degraded. Even not only by humans, but even by animals or whatnot. Another thing is that there's a prohibition of autopsy and desecration. So, in general, cutting or delaying burial for examination is forbidden unless there's a life-saving procedure that needs to happen. So I'll leave it there. I know there could be a long discussion about that, but there's always suspension of the Torah when it comes to saving one's life, and that could include, possibly incriminating a murderer, right? Because we don't want him to murder someone else. But in general, if there's no suspicion, then there should be no autopsy and desecration if there's no reason to believe that is necessary. And another law is that all the blood and severed parts must be buried with the deceased. Okay? And that there should be confidentiality and silence. Anyone who is involved in preparing the dead person's body should not talk about it, talk about what they see or experience personally with that body. It would be considered gossip, and it is disrespecting the dead, dishonoring the dead. Okay, next is chesed, shel, emet, which means that the burial work should be one that is voluntary. The people who do it should not be paid, and there should be no expectation of reward. So this is something that internally we must do as Jews, as part of our congregation. It's a congregational responsibility to prepare and bury our own dead. It's also our constitutional right in America to do this. Okay. Also, if there's any uncertainty, this must be referred to a qualified halakhic authority. And this is partly why we're going through these laws. We could always learn things more in depth, but I figured we should at least learn the basics now. So some key differences between Jewish and Christian death and burial practices is the view of the body. In Jewish practice, the body is sacred even after death, and it retains inherent dignity, kavod emet. Now, in Christian practice, the body is respected, but it's often seen as a mere shell that is of less importance. Okay, and so, for example, in Christianity, it's okay to cremate the body, but in Judaism, that's not allowed. Okay, so emphasis is often on the soul departing to heaven, and not much emphasis on the body. Rav Safa, go ahead, please.
I just had a question. I had a question. I can hold it to the end.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question, but
Okay,
I'll hold it to the end.
Timing of burial. Burial is done as soon as possible in Judaism, usually within 24 hours, and delays are only for honor of the deceased. Burial may be delayed in Christianity days or even weeks for logistical, emotional, or ceremonial reasons, right? But that's not so in Judaism. Also, Jews will perform ritual purification by Chevra Kadisha according to halakha. It's not something that we can delegate to a non-Jew. This is the same thing with our meat. We cannot delegate our meat to be slaughtered by a non-Jew. It is one of our an important religious rite. In Christianity, the preparation is usually done by funeral home staff, which the family of the deceased doesn't even know. They don't even know them. And there's no ritual washing requirement. Also in Judaism, it's only supposed to be done by trained Jewish volunteers. Men prepare men and women prepare women. Funeral professionals typically handle preparation regardless of gender. Now, it's okay for people who are not trained to do it if there's no one else who's available to do it. Of course, obviously, it's because we have to bury that dead body as soon as possible. So we're not going to wait for someone who is perfectly trained. We do the best we can. It is good to have at least one person who is trained, however, to guide the process. And this is what happened when the Pizaros first participated became the Chevra Kadisha, first participated in a Chevra Kadisha. Is they were not trained, but they had people there who did have experience doing it. So now they are probably the most trained people in our congregation, which is why I would like them to talk about their experience. Also, now in Christianity, funeral professionals typically handle preparation regardless of gender. But in Jewish practice, it's strictly men with men and women with women. Okay, and Messianics also do not practice this because they're not observant of Jewish law or custom or tradition. So we are very different here, at Benei Avraham. So this is something that we take upon ourselves to do according to the way our ancestors did. So also in Judaism, it should be simple white shrouds that the dead is buried in, whereas in Christianity, the deceased is often dressed in personal clothing, suits or dresses. Maybe their finest clothes, right? In Judaism, no, we're all the same. In Judaism, the casket should be simple, wooden, and there should be a direct earth burial. There should be no metal or ornamentation on it, much like the shofar. The shofar that we blow, it's not supposed to have any metal or ornamentation for use on Rosh Hashanah. We can blow a shofar that is ornamental and decorated with metal, but not for the halakhic shofar blowing during the prayer services on Rosh Hashanah. Decorative caskets are used in Christianity. Metal and luxury materials are permitted. Also in Judaism, there is no viewing of the dead body. The body remains covered to preserve its dignity. whereas in Christianity, there's a viewing and open casket. Wakes are common in many traditions, probably derived from paganism because it's not a Jewish practice. And then also embalming is prohibited unless if it's legally required, then Jews will do this. They will allow it if we have to in order to not, go to jail, right? So we're not going to violate that, if it's going to endanger us in that way. But otherwise prohibited, whereas in Christianity, it's common and widely practiced. Also, as I stated earlier, cremation is forbidden in Jewish law. There's a verse in the Tanakh, and I don't think it was in the Torah, I think it was in the Tanakh if I remember correctly, where Hashem rebukes, I forgot who, he rebuked someone for turning the bones of someone into, I think it was into lye or something. But in order to do that, you have to first turn it into ashes, yes. But in Christianity, it's widely accepted in most Christian denominations, though discouraged historically. Now, my father was cremated, and my mother wants to be cremated also. And I asked my Breslov rabbi about this, and I told him that this is what my mom wants. And then he told me, and I'm passing this on in case you may face the situation, he said, she shouldn't be cremated, but if that is her dying wish, then I have to help facilitate that. But I don't, obviously I'm not going to be doing the act myself. It would be another hired person to do it. It should not be done. I should not do it. But if that is her dying wish, I also don't want to dishonor her in that sense, right? So I'm trying to encourage her to make preparations to get that done before her death, so that I don't have to do that much for that, or maybe even have my brother take care of that. She also wants to be buried next to my father in the Philippines. That is no problem for me to do. It's just the cremation is the part that I should try to not do myself for sure, as much as possible. Also, prayer and ritual focus. The focus in a Jewish funeral is on honoring the dead and comforting the living. There are no prayers for the dead's salvation or anything like that, which there is sometimes in Christianity. Catholicism specifically focused on the soul's entry into heaven and eternal rest. Although there is, however, something common between Catholicism and Judaism is the idea of a sort of purgatory that is in common with Catholicism and Judaism. That's another subject that I don't want to go into. But it's not the same thing though as like Christian salvation and things like that. There are differences, right? Also, the role of the clergy. The rabbi provides halakhic guidance and does not perform necessarily a body preparation himself. Whereas in Christianity, the priest or pastor often leads funeral and graveside services. Now, the rabbi will do that, but the rabbi won't necessarily prepare the body. That's all. Oftentimes in the funeral homes, there's some kind of clergyman that works there and also like gives the sermon and performs the service. You know what I mean? Like in the funeral homes, yeah. So in Judaism, Lauren said a lot of times is awkward because the person who, in the funeral home, the clergyman who is leading the service doesn't know the person at all who is deceased. But of course not all Christians have it that way, but I have seen that, especially if the deceased does not belong to a church, then it could be that way. Okay, and then we have, there's a structure in mourning in Judaism. We have aninut, shiva, shloshim, and a year of mourning. In Catholicism and Christianity, the practices vary, and it's less formalized. the theological emphasis. This is not necessarily always true because there are different opinions in Judaism regarding life after death. But typically, and this is also not true when it comes to conservative and Reform Judaism. But there was the resurrection of the dead, and I would say that this has been the most historical belief in Judaism, is the resurrection of the dead in the future world. And in Christianity, the focus is more on an immediate heavenly reward or rest with God, right? And then another big difference is that in Jewish law, burial is a communal responsibility, as I said earlier, and a sacred duty. It's a mitzvah. And in Christianity, burial is often treated as a family or institutional responsibility delegated to others who don't have much connection with the dead. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the comments here. I don't want to go on to the next part without the Pizarro's input, so we'll do that hopefully next week while they are here with us. Okay, I'm going to read some of the comments. Unless Yehoshua or Rav Safa, do you want to go ahead and state your comments?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay, I'll just read them. That's okay.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Rav Safa said, in today's society where family may be far away, delay may be allowed so that their family can get to the funeral as soon as possible. Yes. And that's true, but in Jewish law that's not prohibited. It's considered dishonoring. It's considered dishonoring the deceased body. No, we cannot hear you, Rav Safa. So maybe you're trying to share with us. Hold on, Rav Reuven's going to try to fix that.
Hello?
There, now we can hear you. Sorry about that.
Okay. That's okay. So I had some questions about the modern practice of organ harvesting. The way it used to be even 10 years ago, it was pretty much, it was taken to save lives. The way I had experience with my brother is they keep the body alive artificially, and there has now been reports that people may actually be not completely dead when they remove the organs, and it's definitely problematic. About something that we should definitely consider. I wouldn't want to keep another person from being saved, but at the same time, we don't want somebody to have undue amount of suffering, right? So it could be a situation like, I think the current situation with, I think in the 70s, the rabbis discussed the death penalty, and they said there was, I think it was the 80s, around the Reagan administration, and it was basically saying there's so many errors and so many people being put to death that they can't, stand behind that. And I think, just talking from me personally and what I went through, it was very, it was eye-opening because my brother's, that soul is ready to go and be finished, and they're being kept, the body's being kept alive. It seems a bit disrespectful the way it's done today. And this is kind of a side note, is that knowing the Jewish practices of burial makes us wonder, who this person was that was burying Yeshua, right? So I'll just leave it at that. But I think it's an interesting window that we can look at and say, okay, this kind of makes a possibility of that it was a family member, close family member. But anyway, so that's what I wanted to add. I think it's a wonderful service that this is that we're addressing, and it's definitely something to do as a community.
And these things are not easy to do. This is not something that is a familiar thing to many of us. But this is part of taking our Judaism seriously. From birth until death. How do we honor each other the way our people have for thousands of years? And this is a very important part of it. And I just want us to all be prepared wherever we are, in case the time may come, and it will come, right? We're all going to face death at one time or another, and we have to be prepared to do it the way our ancestors have for thousands of years. Any other comments? And also, I'm very happy that Rav Yehoshua also, he has learned the art of to be a mohel. I think that's another very important mitzvah, and I'm so glad that we have that in our community. And this is another thing that is important that to be aware of, that we have to be prepared to, if we're ever called to do to be part of a Chevra Kadisha, that we will know what to do. So this is just the first part of our training. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Oh, and Rav Safa, those are very good points that you brought up. I'd love to maybe study that more and maybe talk about it later too. Maybe you could prepare a class on that one day.
I did have a question that my wife just asked, and we had a concern with. If we're not able to be buried in a Jewish cemetery, that would be the number one. That would be optimal, because it allows for it helps with the child or children's halakhic status. But to be buried Jewishly, there's things that are done differently. Like for instance, the for the most part, there are state laws about having like a crypt, and having the ground not be able to shift. A lot of especially like in Texas and areas that shift constantly, they're the crypt that, so basically you're buried in a solid tomb, like a solid box, and then you're put in this crypt, a concrete crypt, and then it's finished on it. And from what I've heard is that Jewish cemeteries are left open, I guess, so that when the resurrection happens, possibly it'll be easier. But do you know if there? I guess it's something I can research, but about if there's an option to, if we're not able to get a Jewish cemetery, to be buried in a Jewish cemetery, at least to be buried Jewishly. How do we address that?
Testing. Okay. So we have a. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a cemetery near us. I don't know, about 30 minutes away or something like that. That Rabbi Juan set up. It's not a Jewish cemetery, obviously. It's just a big cemetery, but there's a little area where some Jews are buried. I think so far we have 2 there. Yes. So there's that option, unless you can find another cemetery that you know about that we can be buried at. That's that option that we have currently right now.
So it's basically a subsection of a regular cemetery that is designated as a Jewish cemetery. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I did want to let you know that to be aware of not taking advantage of Catholic burials. We had a situation with our daughter that died, and they said, we'll take care of everything, and then we'll convert her after. And we're like, what? What are you talking? They're like, oh yeah, we just come in, we have a priest come in, and we sprinkle this. And I was like, oh goodness,
Oh, wow.
okay, yeah, we don't want that. So
No, no.
Okay, thank you everyone. Hopefully we'll do part 2 next week with the Pizarros and go over, I'd like to do like a step-by-step sort of